Welcome back, everyone, to the Disaster Tough podcast, where we share insights into the big plays and right calls of leadership. We dive deep into the stories, lessons learned, and ideas that will help you in the field. Let's go. Welcome back to the Disaster Tough podcast. I'm your host, John Scardena. I am so excited for this week's episode. I have two really great friends across the pond with CBRNe World. I get their magazine, in fact, on my desk right now. I literally just got the copy in the mail, so I'm pretty excited to see my new copy. But CBRNe World and us kind of go way back at this point because I got to see their offices in person, if you remember that episode. That we got to do with Gwyn. He's the chief editor over there. We also brought in Zoe because she's awesome, and they have great perspectives. She has very cool glasses, so if you're watching the video version, if you're on the audio version, you're missing out. I am clearly the oddball out of the room because I don't have glasses on right now. But you know they're smart. You know they're British. You know they're posh. I don't know. CBRN World they're just really incredible people. And we're so lucky to have a relationship with them where we get to hear from their perspectives because they go all over the globe learning about the latest and greatest and also kind of the most terrible things with CBRNe and trying to help out the responder in all different kinds of incredible ways. And they have their own CBRNe convergence that they do here in the U.S. as well as abroad. And so if you're tracking them, great. If you're not tracking them, absolutely sign up for their magazine, sign up for all their stuff, get on board because CBRNe is definitely going to be a major part of our future. And with that, I want to introduce Gwyn and Zoe to the show. Welcome back to Disaster Tough.
All right, my old China.
Hello, puppet. Hello. So, it's morning here, afternoon over there. We miss you guys. The last time I saw you was in November of last year, and I wanted to do a big shout out for you guys. When I went out to Convergence, there was a lot of really great presentations that I got to see, including there was people from South Carolina who did a presentation that I really, really liked. Those guys, the law enforcement guys, and talking about stadiums and that kind of stuff, because that's kind of my gig. But there was some of your sponsors there as well. Particularly, we had RSET. RSET was one of your booths. I started talking to them, what they were doing for the Navy for the last 10 years and really the Marines. And you fast forward, they came to Dynamic Populations. They did a whole bunch of virtual reality stuff for us. And, before we even get into the episode, I just want to say publicly, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And really for all those people out there who are trying to get stuff done, can you guys just walk us through how you're able to be so influential in your space?
I think it's a twisted sense of humor, really, that we spend so long thinking about the whole sort of can buy rad neat space, and having that sort of black sense of humor that makes us want to be able to sort of delve into sort of various other parts and take perhaps a new look at it. So that the magazine cover that you showed for the April issue, that's looking at maritime toxins. So if you looked recently, there was a case of a couple that got adversely affected by coral toxin, for example. And then you have other sort of paleotoxins and saxitoxins, and these used to be exotic sort of poisons that you could only really sort of utilize in an offensive way if you had lots and lots of aquariums and even more patients. But now, thanks to that ability of synthetic engineering, suddenly these things are within the sort of the realm of the possible in a way that they weren't before. So Zoe and I have the opportunity to be able to sit down, maybe with an alcoholic libation or maybe with coffee, and just to be able to sort of chat about this and do some, wouldn't it be interesting if, and then reach out and find some people that will hopefully talk about this.
Are you looking for bleeding control equipment? Impulse by Doberman Bleeding Control equipment is professional grade and built to save lives. From the Responder Pro Sling for first responders to wall-mounted kits with AEDs, compact packs for ushers and security, and the MCI resupply cache for standby teams, get your Impulse kits and training from impulsekits.com. Protect your school, venue, facility, or community with Doberman Emergency Management's specialized 3x3 approach. We do this with protecting life, property, and continuity of operations through advanced planning, training, and assessments. Learn more about our cutting-edge approach with world-class professionals in emergency services today at DobermanEMG.com. Emergency management is changing. Are you keeping up? The Readiness Lab takes it to the next level with exclusive tabletop exercises, live sessions, and real-world intel. Access the EOC as a TRL Insider, train with us through NLEM, or rep the field with our EMTs. Yeah, that's a pun. We also deliver top-tier marketing and design for emergency services and public safety, outreach, product reviews, trade show support, sponsorships, and more. The Readiness Lab is the #1 emergency services podcast network, home of the NLEM certification, bold outreach, and everything pushing the field forward. Learn more at thereadinesslab.com. You bring up the covers, and I'm wearing one of my CBRNe World shirts right now. Thank you for that. I also wore it when I went to Scotland and got a lot of looks. There's a pretty awesome, but you are able to float and really in a very cool sense combat this idea where if we want to be taken seriously, we also can't have a sense of humor. We can't be human. And for all those groups out there who, their messaging is so boring, nobody wants to look at their messaging and they can't get traction. They complain about this, from an organizational standpoint. But here you come. Your articles are, expert produced, right? Like they are created by professionals. They're really well written, the whole deal. But then you're able to float these fun covers and pull in these, interesting illustrations and have that dark humor.
What was quite bizarre headlines? One of Gwyn's favorites is giving the articles quite funny and quite bizarre headlines, which always make that sort of a bit of extra fun before you delve into the serious.
How did you get to the point where you were like, either F it, I don't care, or let's try this? And it takes those, either one of those two mentalities. Like, I want to see if this gets us traction, or screw it, this is mine anyways. Did you ever have a moment where you were more, I would say, academically stylized, and then you went over to this space, or have you always been creative since the beginning? Like, did you see an increase since you became more creative?
I think that it depends on whether it's a staff written piece or one that's been provided to us. So certainly if it's somebody that sent me their article all about, the physiological burden sort of from experiments done in southern Sudan, me coming up with a hilarious title for it doesn't always wash with their bosses. What is this our article? Is this what you called it? You absolute lunatic. And I go, no, the editor called it that.
Yeah.
He said on the Casper, things like that. Let's sort of pop references, movie references, Simpsons references.
Interesting.
Don't blame me. I voted for Kodor. That kind of thing. You need to sort of stay up with a certain age and sort of ethnographic demographic here. And Zoe brings their own sort of taste into it as well.
Well, Zoe, again, I love these glasses. I like how Gwyn called them your media glasses beforehand, but you guys have a cool style about you. And again, it just combats like this, like, oh, if I show up anywhere, I have to wear a suit and tie, and I have to be bland, and I have to be serious all the time. But behind closed doors, all those guys always make jokes anyways. Like, everybody's like has that dark humor, but then they put on this face that they think is professional, but really I think they're diluting what they're. If nobody wants to see or interact with your material, then you're not going to get your message across. And I think you guys in real time are proving that there is a way to float that. How do you get to the point where you're like, okay, like, is there a point of too far, or is there, like, how do you figure out like what's the appropriate amount of, spice, I guess you could say?
I mean, well, when it comes to sort of attending events, etc., we'll dress smartly, but we're never not going to bring ourselves, because what's the point in not being ourselves? and then people getting to know us and thinking we're mental. Let's just have them think we're mental straight off the bat.
Yeah.
But also, you know what it's like in the CBRN and the emergency management community, we're all a little bit mad.
Yeah,
So
you have to be a little bit.
like you were saying, suited and booted, being dead serious all the time, we're probably not going to make the contacts or make the friends because they're going to think that we're not one of them when we are. Gwyn's been working in this area for 20 plus years. I was a practitioner before I became a writer. So
You were just testing it out or on yourself? I found this cool chemical compound that I needed.
I was sniffing cyanide in a mortuary for many years. That may account for my brain issues.
I see.
She just likes licking things. She used to have a podcast called "I Will Lick It," but I've taken up with her for number of legal reasons.
If I lick it, it's mine. Neither went very well, but it's our personality shouldn't just come out in ourselves. It should also be part of the magazine and part of what we write about. And that's a bit like when Gwyn was saying about writing about the palotoxins. Why not embrace the niche? It may be very, very niche, but that could be a fun article for someone that's never heard of any of this before. So in the middle of reading about lithium-ion batteries, all of a sudden we've got a family that gassed themselves with the core in their fish tank.
Hooray! Okay.
Honestly, I still want to do a pub quiz and just have everybody sort of, just sobbing by half time. Just a constant procession of the worst ways to die.
I got through this like kind of dark moment in my life where I thought like this entire like life experience was just creative ways to how to kill people. And once I got beyond that, life got a lot better. But there was like this like a whole period where I was just like constantly bombarded with like, it's like, oh, that's another creative way of like somebody end up killing themselves. Like it is quite bizarre thinking about all the million different ways of how this happens. We've had like, Steve on here. We've had you guys on here before. We've talked about CBRNe versus hazmat. I think kind of the future for at least emergency management and really like I would say the strategic level, right? Like when I say emergency management, I'm really talking about organizing that response capability. There has to be a way that we just figure out the difference of intent. And I know that CBRN versus hazmat really comes down to intent. What do you think is the biggest hindrance on basic understanding of somebody who's new? When they show up to Convergence for the first time or they start reading their magazines, have you had those conversations with people where they're like, I had no idea about X? Is it all the different ways you could die? Or is it more like, I didn't realize that this issue is such a bigger issue than what it is because it doesn't get reported on by anyone except for you?
I don't think.
I mean,
oh yeah, I stumped you. I stumped the Brits just like 250 years ago when we stumped the Brits.
Let's bring the White House back into this.
I would just like to say there's an entire Instagram video series about 100 Americans versus 100 Brits, just like 100 men versus a gorilla. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, I'm like, we've already done this. I don't know if anybody recalls, but we won.
But surely that would be about 5 Americans and 95 Frenchmen, because I think that's the only way you win is when the French.
Oh yeah, let's give any credit to the French. You know how they go to war, right?
What about the French Navy? This is an awful calendar.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Americans outsmart you. That's crazy.
Outsmarted by bringing the French on board.
Hey, that's a pretty good move.
Seriously, they're actually weighing up. If they bring in people from like Baltimore and Atlanta, are they going to be people from South London and Wales? And people are really delving into
Oh my gosh. Speaking of which, did we do this the last time you were on the show, Gwyn, where you're able to do all the different accent changes? It is phenomenal if you haven't heard Gwyn do this before. How you change your British accent to different. Can you do that in real time?
No, because my head's not in that space. Like I can sometimes do the southern drawl if I think about half an hour. Last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. Terrible. I know. Oh, for all this part.
It is like
the British one. Oh no, to be sure, John. It's lovely to see you. So it is.
All right, we're going to cut that whole part out. All right, let's get back to CBRNe World. You have cool accents. You have cool stuff. The plantation. That's fascinating that you're tracking that.
No, you
Okay.
can't cut that bit out. That bit stays
Oh
there.
crap! Now we have to keep that whole part. This is like the rewind. Wait. I have a...
New people coming in. So, is there anything?
Oh my gosh, Zoe, are you the project manager over there? What is your like official title?
I just didn't know if you'd forgotten what we were talking about.
I did completely. It was the glasses. Honestly, I was so taken back by how glorious those things are. Okay, let's go back.
Something else you can't cut out.
Yeah, exactly.
I think people are sometimes surprised that things haven't changed, that they thought things had gone away, so certain issues had gone away, but they've always been there.
Like what?
The chemical suicides, for instance. We've had people tell us that they didn't know they were still happening, but they very much are, just not as in greater frequency. People mixing chemicals in their homes still and gassing their entire families while trying to clean the bathroom.
Oh, interesting. Like they're surprised by that one. So I would always assume that, like, there's a level of stupidity out there. And so if you have access to literally anything, someone's going to figure out how to hurt themselves. But that is it's kind of fascinating to think, like, we talk about, how people die in the U.S., right? A lot, especially with gun violence and, that horrible, horrible situation that we have to deal with constantly because of essentially politicians at this point. But and a scary cultural reality. But I don't think people realize, like, the gun violence always makes the news, but the other stuff, and really CBRNe and kind of adjacent, it happens way more frequently than gun violence. And the potential for catastrophic incidents, our dynamic populations class, we've done sarin gas before. We've shown how people made ricin in a nursing home, like things that actually are happening, and it could make 9/11 look very small in comparison. From a editorial perspective and trying to figure out what makes it into your magazine and what people should know about, you say CBRNe World, and you really are tracking everything. I mean, you literally brought up plantation in the United States. How are you able to articulate a global perspective and help the reader, move forward on the most relevant? Because you could literally talk about anything from mixing chemicals to your home to, Saudi Arabia and, big stuff. So how do you figure that out?
I think sometimes it depends on how much information there is available on it. So if something happens in the US, for example, you've got great news media. There's a wide variety of different angles and individuals that we know there that we can perhaps get information out. But then if you look at, for example, something like the adulteration of wedding beer in Africa, sometimes...
Say that one more time.
The adulteration of wedding beer.
The adulteration of wedding beer. Did I hear that right? Okay.
So you've got your party going on, and you think to yourself, I want everybody to get absolutely lit. What do I need to do? I need to add something that's going to take the potency of this beer up a level.
Oh.
So they will add malathion or parathion. So these are fundamentally organophobic. And suddenly you've got 20 dead. And no one's really sure about, because weirdly nobody, comes and says, actually I was a bit of a doofus, it was me. So you don't know whether this is a jilted sort of, partner somewhere that has spiked it maliciously, or whether it is just, Uncle Jacob because he thinks that, malathion goes with everything. You've just got no idea how or why this stuff ended up in this sort of, wedding beer barrel. Yet the body count is there. So, and often there aren't follow-ups on this. So it just appears as a sort of a story in the sort of the various feeds, and you just go, oh, there's another one.
Man, that's nuts. Like I said, that's one of the stories I've never heard about, never considered. Then here we go, once again schooling us right on the show.
It actually happens a lot more than you'd realize.
The death of wedding beer.
Whether it's wedding beer, whether it's the food, whether it's some other kind of alcohol, adulteration at feasts happens quite a lot globally.
And then sort of individuals deciding to target foodstuffs. So, you get sacked and you sort of bring cake along for everybody. Oopsie in the cake.
Oopsie in your poopsie. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it's always a sort of difficulty in terms of defining what makes a CBRN incident. So is it the toxicity of the agent? In which case, if you poison sort of 30 people with, malathion, that doesn't count, but killing one person with Novichok does. Or is it the volume once the body count goes over a certain amount, then that counts as the CBRN incident, in which case Litvinenko, the Skripals, Navalny, they don't count because they're only onesie-twosies, they're just assassinations. So it's always been one of these problems that when you put the microscope on what is CBRN, it becomes very difficult to define, other than it's an individual deciding to be able to use a hazardous substance against another individual or individuals.
I think it's very disappointing to hear that the editor of CBRNe World can't define CBRN. It is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and sometimes explosives. Maybe it's just like, maybe it's not even that. Maybe people are like, well, my marriage went to crap, and so I'm dead inside, and so now I want other people to be dead outside.
Oh, the amount of people that have been ratted on by a spouse because they have the sort of doorway of mystery that she must never open, and then Bluebeard, she opens it and goes, and puts a call into the police. And again, is this an incident? You've got people that love collecting chemicals, they love collecting explosives, and it turns out often the two of those things don't live together very well.
And we see a lot in the States at the moment, lots of homemade explosives incidents happening where, John was in his garage playing with his collection of chemicals no one knew he had, and he took out 4 houses and 6 people. That's when you sort of go, well, the amount of chemicals he's got could be considered it's a CBRN incident, but the actual fallout, the explosion, everything else, does that fall into hazmat? So there's quite often a bit of a crossover, and do we separate them? Or do we just have, people that understand the differing levels working on the same type of incident?
Yeah, usually when I talk to people, like when we do like counterterrorism exercises and they don't have this kind of background, I just make it super simple for them. I just say the difference is intent. Did they intend to hurt somebody or they intend not to hurt somebody? Either way, you're dealing with a lot of the same substances. And I would say CBRN is, when I think of hazmat, honestly, and I think a lot of other people have this connotation as well, they typically think like oil, right? Because they see hazardous materials on trains, or they see these signs, and so they associate it with oil and gas, right? But it's more extensive than that. And I think CBRN helps people understand that it can be, radiological can be much more than what their initial concept might be. When we were doing WMD testing in Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, and working with evacuation routes for, this is public knowledge at this point, so whatever. But I was a Georgetown student and got to see the WMD testing and hearing about the live agents and all that stuff that they had, LL and L. And then I went and got a new job and heard from FEMA Region 9 at the time. This is like several years ago. And somebody presented the evacuation plan. And the only route was by LL and L to get literally everybody out of there if there was a major earthquake. And I raised my hand as the new guy, which you never really want to do in the room. But I was like, hey, why are we going by LL and L if they have live agents? And the person was like, they haven't had live agents there in 10, 15 years. It was just a guess. The guy didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, well, I was there 3 months ago and they do. And it was just like the blank stares all over the room. And I was like, hey, hate to be the new guy in the room, but maybe rethink your evacuation plan. And so that's where CBRNe, emergency management, emergency response, those planning matrices, how they can all converge, you like that, convergence, can come together. I will say, like I said, I was really impressed at at Convergence in I think November. I think it was late October, wasn't it? But because they started talking about the planning aspects and reducing frequency of impact. When I talk to a lot of CBRN experts, they rarely are able to articulate to me the strategic planning aspects outside of tactical. They're like, hey, we need to get these Tyvek suits in here. We need to have these resources. We need to do this testing. It's like, man, there's a whole other component of this of your general population. But in order to specialize in CBRN or hazmat, typically you have to be a tactician, right? If you were going to give advice on how to like be able to pull back to the larger scale stuff, not just the response, but how to do more of the mitigation perspective, i.e., death weddings, which is wild. You know, that should be your next cover, by the way. Love to help you with that. But like, how do you get these people who are so tactical to think strategic? Or are they still strategic when they think, oh, this is how the bad guy would act, and so I think I know the whole process when that's not what we're talking about?
I'd say for CBRN, we're lucky in that sort of people tend to break into sort of two fields. One is it's just a job. I don't think about it as soon as I leave work. And then you have the other people that I call the holders of the true flame who think about CBRN the whole time. It is very much sort of Lyme disease. CBRN is that you either don't have it, or once you have it, you never get rid of it. So people that sort of that do get it, they're keen to be able to talk about it. They're keen to be able to share expertise. They may be a little bit tightly wound. It's okay.
Yeah. I think the same thing happens in a lot of fields, but in particular, anytime you're talking about military emergency management, CBRN, this kind of world where people are essentially just over it and their duties as assigned and they go home, their job. And then there's the people who go all in. My issue is that sometimes the people who go all in is that they go all in so much that they're not teachable anymore. Because they're like, I know it inside out. I've been doing it for X amount of years, and this college grad who's 20 years old is trying to tell me, he's like, kid, I've already thought about this before, and they're not really considering the real problem. How do you guys stay teachable in that moment? Or how do you bring in an expert who is, like Steve Johnson? I love Steve for many reasons, but one of which is he is one of the most humble people I know. He's willing to be teachable. And I think that's why he stays at the forefront of what he's doing, right? Do you guys get that spectrum of like, I'm an expert because I think I know everything, all the way through the humble? And you got to be a little crazy to be able to go into hazmat and CBRN, right? So like, how do you deal with you need to be incredibly confident and be able to like, what is that movie where Nicolas Cage pulls out the balls? The Rock. Yeah, like you gotta be a little crazy to be able to like, oh, I think I can do this, all the way through like the humility, teachable perspective. Where's the right balance you think that you need?
I mean, I guess a lot of the time it's just going to be how you approach it. I mean, I've met quite a few of these I know everything people in my life. But I think the one thing I've learned is when trying to teach them, don't tell them that they don't know. Speak to them in a way that, a lot of the time they feel like they're part of the conversation and that they're there giving you the answers, but you're still teaching them something. You're still giving them a new perspective. I find sometimes if you try and tell someone like that, no, this is how it is, or this is how you do it, that's when you're going to get the biggest pushback.
Yeah. I mean, the disaster that I'm dealing with right here, right now in St. Louis is that exact problem. There's people who are totally incompetent, who are not emergency management. So shout out to emergency managers.
They know how to do it, right?
They think they know how to do it, and they're not. But the problem is some of the other voices in the room who do know what they're doing. I'm a little nervous that their approach is stark and trying to call out, because this is what happens a lot of times in response. People think, oh, I got to get right to the point, command and control, yell, get the thing done. And like that doesn't really work in most situations unless you have a command structure. And if you're talking to two equal parties that have different jobs, it can just become offensive and annoying. And which again goes back to the original thought process of you guys are able to float in multiple different worlds very well, whether it's understanding serious versus a little bit of play with your covers, or having this business attitude with these bright pink glasses, whatever it is, you're able to float these worlds, and it truly is impressive. And quite frankly, we could use a lot more of this intel because there's big problems, and those problems are becoming more real with 3D printing, with AI, with some other stuff. AI can be good for good, and AI could be really bad. I know that's kind of a perspective that you guys are working on from just like a terrible transition here. Tell me more about like the use of AI and maybe even 3D printing. I know we didn't talk about that beforehand, but is that really changing the landscape for us, or are we making it bigger than what it is?
I think at the moment we're possibly making it a little bit bigger than it is because it's not there yet. But the people in the know that it can get there. So
it can get a lot bigger.
Yeah, there are certain people that are worried, and they're right to be worried because they understand what AI could potentially do. Whether we focus on it too much now, or we should be looking at other things, and we're wasting intellectual property on what's not happened yet, is a conversation for another day. We might see that in 10 years' time.
Well, can I ask you a question based off of that? Actually,
Yeah.
Can I interrupt you? So here's the problem with that I have, and I think you guys might deal with this as well. How do you deal with I mean, there's always going to be the balance. I want it more tactical than balance. You have a hot topic. Ooh, that is a very good CBRN fun. Okay, you have a hot topic like AI, but the reality is we're missing other things that are very important. What is, from a very in the weeds conversation perspective, how do you get people to focus on what truly matters? Because you still need the readers. You still want to get people who are like interested in the cool new thing. I mean, we do that, but we have a problem where people are missing the basics now because they're so focused on the advanced stuff that they don't even know how to do the basics anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where we're lucky that we've got 56 pages that we can wax lyrically in. So, AI and emerging pathogens, yes, that's a problem. That's something we need to think about, but we're not going to write 10 articles on it in one issue. So Gwyn and I can sit and talk about an editorial program, and there could be 12 things that are major problems at the moment, and we can pick through those and decide this month, this is what we're going to write about because this is what's in the news the most. So we can get all of the perspectives across and not heavily focus on too many things.
How far in advance are you able to plan with your magazine if you're constantly dealing with what's most current?
I mean, arguably we sort of plan 12 months out, but that
really
is what Harold Macmillan called events, dear boy, events. So, when something happens like an attack on Zaporizhia, or again, in terms of a new hemorrhagic fever coming out in somewhere unpleasant, that we're able to sort of look and go, right, well, we'll shelve something on sort of PPE, for example, because what's happening now is far more of the moment than latest, for example, respirator design. So we will move things around, and if we can, we'll try and sort of come back to it later on in the year. But again, it is very much dependent on how much CBRN is happening. So let's say the magazine's coming into its 20th year now, and I think if you do go back 18 or 19 years ago, we were a lot more wedded to the synopsis because there just wasn't as much CBRN stuff going on. But now it's just insane, just whether it's state, whether it's terrorists, whether it's criminal, whether it's negligence. There's just so the churn of incidents and the churn of things that people need to be aware of is really quite high.
Yeah, the world's getting smaller with communication technologies and the ability to shipment. We had a DEA guy on here, really awesome, true expert. His name is Chip. And he tracks a lot of the supply chain routes from China to cartels into the U.S. with fentanyl and a bunch of other stuff. And Hezbollah and just some really crazy supply chain issues that we're dealing with. And, there was a video that I watched from when I was in DC, I don't know how many years ago, 12, 15 years ago, talking about Hezbollah and trying to work with gangs in the US and rival groups, even the KKK, because of a shared interest of, you know, trying to destroy other people, right? And so these traditional groups who are even in conflict are working together because of supply chain and capability and understanding that the bigger impact that they can make. And it is scary. I mean, it can keep you up at night pretty quick. And yet this stuff doesn't happen every day at the scale that it could. And it really is a shout out to everybody who's looking at it constantly, those true holders of the craft, really, and trying to think through how do we mitigate this as much as possible. And so it comes down to, again, your publication and the groups that you're working with and the people sending in those articles of, hey, it is becoming a bigger problem very quickly. And these one-off events are not so much one-off events. Again, you're always going to have stupid. You're always going to have somebody who's like, hey, let me spike the beer apparently and kill a bunch of people, all the way through assassinations. But I don't think you can do emergency management in the future without an understanding of CBRN. I don't think you can do a true assessment of your community without understanding the supply chains that are coming through your town, whether it's oil companies or otherwise, and not working with them to understand how to mitigate these problems. And so it's, again, a big shout out to you guys. I'm looking at the time here and trying to make sure that we respectful for your time, especially because a little bit later in the day. I've called you guys out a bunch of times on the podcast. We run ads for you guys, and you guys have thankfully put our ad in some of your magazines as well, just because I think we have a good relationship. And we want to help you guys out all the way because, again, we truly believe in what you're doing. If somebody's listening to this episode and they're like, okay, I didn't know what was happening in Africa. I didn't know what's happening overseas. I didn't understand why that plantation got burned down, a ghost of, the past, whatever it is. They're like, okay, I need to start understanding. Oh, that's a face. Thanks, Gwyn. Where's the fastest way that they can start learning about your space from kind of a ground level up? Do they start subscribing to the magazine, or are there certain publications you're like, subscribe and check these ones out first?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm going to say subscribe to our magazine.
There you go.
Well, I mean, I know it's plugging ourselves, but we do have 20 years worth of archival information for you to look through, as well as all the news stories that we post.
And it's free.
And it's free, especially if you're a first responder. The hard copy is free as well.
Wow.
So our basic online is free for everyone. Follow me on LinkedIn. I am always a bundle of joy with multiple news stories that cover everything from Plumpit in Arkansas putting ricin in the trees because of trespassers, to wedding beer, to overturned tankers and chemicals, to East Palestine, to whatever's going on. The CBRNe World and my personal LinkedIn are actually flooded with fun news.
Well, I will say I actually learned quite a bit from your LinkedIn. I don't know if you see me liking your post. One question for you I have, and this is kind of maybe not the last question kind of question, but I had a really great friend in Georgetown where she wanted to start tracking active shooter events, and every single day on Facebook, her personal Facebook, she was posting, and it became like her whole world, and got a little nervous for her for like mental health from you posting all the time and you guys looking at this stuff and having a good sense of humor. I'm sure that's one coping mechanism as well as fun. How do you keep both of your heads above water in terms of, okay, like how do you sleep at night essentially if you're looking at it all the time?
Her answer is inspirational leadership. Just going to put that in.
She is a great boss.
I'll be very honest, John. I turn off at 5:30.
That's awesome.
I don't read the news at night at 5:30. Don't get me wrong. I will go home and binge murder podcasts, but it's not CBRN. I've learned from my previous position is I can't be all things CBRN all the time. So I have to switch off.
Yeah.
Just churn.
Gwyn, what about you?
I just go home and I think about new ways to be inspirational. I sort of just I sit by that, doing 1,000 yards.
Trumpets and tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How can I get this great team of people that I have working for me to be 5% better tomorrow? And then 10. So, I mean, I don't know. As I said, I've been doing this job for so long, my mind just runs through the sort of the same rabbit holes. I take your point that, it can be difficult, but I'm also finding it exceptionally helpful when you're having a party. It's time for people to go home. And you just sort of, just crack open the latest case that you've just been reading about today, and people suddenly go, "Oh, I think it's time to leave." Yes.
I think it's for the listener, it's not in contrast. You can be all in all the time and be a true steward of your craft, and also recognize that there is a time to shut off and there's a time to focus on other things. We had this tornado recovery in St. Louis and still went to the picnic with our church, and then I got the phone call and I was able to focus on the phone call. I think the people who do really great in this field are able to compartmentalize and be all in when they're supposed to be all in on different things. And those who can't, I think that's when the spiral starts to happen. And so great call outs. You can be a 24/7 person as long as you're able to compartmentalize. And again, I'm touting you guys up because I like you so much, but legitimately, everybody who's listening in, the first thing they should do is subscribe to what you guys are doing, because it's going to be part of their future, whether they like it or not. It'll become negligent if you don't know about it. So, guys, thank you so much for again coming on the podcast, for talking to me, for doing great things for the last 20 years in the field, for your awesome magazine, your cool covers that I actually want to put on our coffee table on the outside there, and honestly, striking a balance between fun and serious, and being so inviting and so posh and gracious. So,
good luck with the editing of this.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm just going to cut out that whole last part so you guys get the compliment. No one's going to hear that. They're just going to say, sorry for this episode and subscribe. But seriously, tell us all the link of where they can go if they want to subscribe to your stuff.
So it's www.CBRNeworld.com, and there you can find the magazine, the news, and all of our upcoming events for 2025.
Mic drop. All right. Thanks, guys, so much again. Everybody who's listening in, if you like this episode, the easiest way to tell us is a 5-star rating and subscribe. And because Zoe's on LinkedIn, because CBRNe World is all over social media, because we work with them, we tag them in all the stuff that we do because we like what they're doing. Reach out to them directly. If you have a question that is for the community, or you found something that is really fascinating in CBRN, put it in one of the comments. If you have a question specifically for Zoe or for Gwyn about this world or about editing, send us an email at contact@thereadinesslab.com. We'll forward it on to them, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.